Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to Paisano's Music and Vinyl Talk. I am your host, Paisano. If it's your first time visiting my channel, welcome. And if you've been watching for some time and enjoying the content, please subscribe if you have not done so. I would appreciate it very much. Keep the subscriptions and the comments coming, please. I love them both. Tonight we're going to talk about an American rock band by the name of Love, a group you do not hear about at all anymore. But they had some success in the late 60s. This was their third studio album, and they were led by Arthur Lee. And he was kind of an eccentric. Kind of had an inflated ego. A good songwriter, but they didn't like to tour that much. This was a lean towards this was, like I said, their third studio album, and leaned towards a more folkier, quieter sound, more acoustic sound. With some very good arrangements on here. You know, they had a lot of horns and a lot of instruments on this, and a lot of impressive arrangements of the songs. Although, you know, I've never been a huge fan of this album, or Love for that matter. I kind of bought it sight unseen on the recommendation of the book I had on 60s rock. It mentioned this as an extremely influential album on future groups, and I do agree with that. I hear we're very early Pink Floyd, like I'm talking like Syd Barrett. Pink Floyd would have been influenced by these guys a little bit, and because they came out around the same time. Actually, these guys were operating a little bit before the original Pink Floyd. And I hear Bob Dylan's influence on this band quite a bit. Their big downfall was really their reluctance to tour outside of LA. And they were quickly overshadowed on their label Elektra, which was a pretty much a brand new label, by their label mates, The Doors. And the Doors were really hot right out of the wrapper, and they kind of left these guys in the dust. Even though when they'd appear together, the Doors would graciously let Arthur Lee and Love close the show, because they knew he'd cause problems otherwise. He had a very inflated ego. But outside of L.A., they really didn't hit the road. And after this album, the original group broke up. Some of the key members left, and he replaced them. And he kept going with the name Love for a little while. And then he kind of did his own thing. He got other groups together. Arthur Lee did. And for a while he just completely disappeared. He would appear on TV in Europe occasionally, and on cable access programs in the United States in the late 80s and early 90s. He was pretty much forgotten. One of his last appearances was on Jules Holland's show. He would host all sorts of music. He had a great show in the early 2000s, and he had Arthur Lee on in 2003, and it was pretty enjoyable. And he died shortly thereafter. I think he died in 2005. But he was a contemporary. He was friends with Sly Stone. I know Jimi Hendrix appeared on one of his songs shortly before he died in 1970. And in 2009, I remember reading in Rolling Stone magazine they had come across some studio tracks, some demos and such, and I think it was called Lost Love or Love Lost. And they really kind of recommended it for fans of Arthur Lee only. And I've gone online recently and checked it out. It's totally out of print. I would have to buy a used copy of it on CD. But it's pretty much fans only. But it's, by all accounts, it sounds very interesting. Excuse me. But like I said, these guys were label mates with the Doors on the early days of Elektra. Yeah, I don't care for the album that much. I don't see it as great as a lot of the critics of the day did, and you don't hear about this group at all. And okay, let's go over the track listing. Some very unusual titles. Side 1 begins with Alone Again or A House Is Not a Motel, and More Again, The Daily Planet, Old Man, and side 1 finishes with The Red Telephone. Side 2, first song is called Maybe the People Would Be the Times, or Between Clark and Hilldale, whatever the hell that means. Live and Let Live, The Good Humor Man, he sees everything like this. Bummer in the Summer, and You Set the Scene. All right. Arthur Lee was Arthur Lee on guitar and vocals, John Eccles on guitar, Brian McLean on guitar and vocal, Ken Forsey on bass, and Michael Stewart on percussion. It's the flip side, it's a shot of the band as they appeared in 1967. This the cover would lead to would kind of suggest this was a psychedelic group. I don't consider them psychedelic at all. Well, like I said, there's some good arrangements of the songs, but it sounds old. It sounds real old. There's a shot of the vinyl. Classic Elektra label. The red and the black. Alrighty. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. What will Paisano dig up next week? As we continue our journey through the history of rock. Tune in. Find out. Thank you, and good night, YouTube.